Hello, everyone. First of all, I just want to say thank you for being here. I know that this has been a long journey. Today, the Fort Pierce Police Department completed an exhaustive 7-month administrative investigation into the officer-involved shooting of Mr. Demarcus Semer. It included the review of over 5,000 pages of documentation, approximately 47 hours of audio and video files, and 5,000 evidence photographs. April 23, 2016 was a tragic day for our beautiful city. Just before midnight, Officer Ralph Holmes conducted a legitimate traffic stop and Sergeant Brian McKnight arrived as his backup. During this stop, a number of errors were made that resulted in the loss of life. One of the errors was Mr. Semer's decision to flee from the scene. Our administrative investigation has revealed that our officers also made a series of tactical errors which created a dangerous situation that led them to use deadly force. The investigation determined that Officer Ralph Holmes was in violation of 12 policies to include insubordination, neglect of duty, and failure to keep his video system operating. Investigation also found that Sergeant Brian McKnight was in violation of 3 department policies, again, insubordination, neglect of duty, and code of conduct. While the shooting may be justified by the letter of the law, these officers could have taken steps to prevent it. As a result, this morning, both officers were released from the Fort Pierce Police Department. We hold our officers to the highest possible standard, not because our citizens, it is truly because our citizens deserve this. It is because it is truly the right thing to do. Both of these officers were seasoned veterans. Both are members of our SWAT team, and they had served as training officers. Combined, they had more than 5,000 hours of training. As a result, I expect the best police work from both of these officers. On April 23rd, that did not occur. It is also stated that Officer Holmes attempted to pull over Mr. Demarcus Semer for speeding. He was clocked at 45 miles per hour in a 25 mile per hour zone. Initially, Mr. Semer would not pull over, but he eventually did. He then refused to hand over his driver's license, but he eventually did. As Officer Holmes approached the vehicle, he smelled the odor of marijuana and saw what was later confirmed as marijuana on the dashboard. At this point, Officer Holmes should have asked Mr. Semer to cut off his car. That did not occur. That was the first tactical error. Officer Holmes reached inside the car and tried to unlock the front door, but Mr. Semer immediately locked it back. This continued until Officer Holmes was able to manage to get the vehicle open. Sergeant Brian McKnight had arrived a few moments prior to this, and he went to the passenger side of the vehicle. This is where he committed his first tactical error. By opening the door, the vehicle was still running. He reached inside and looked to make sure that there was no weapons or suspect inside of the vehicle. He created an officer jeopardy in doing so. As the supervisor on scene, not only should he have had the car turned off for his safety, but for the safety of Officer Holmes. We expect great restraint, great experience, and great things from our supervisors. And in this case, the car should have been turned off. Next, Mr. Semer made the unlawful decision to accelerate and flee from the scene. Because Sergeant McKnight had put himself in a dangerous situation by standing in between the door and the frame of the vehicle, he felt that he had no other choice but to jump inside of the vehicle. In doing so, he placed himself in a very dangerous situation. As the vehicle began to flee, Officer Holmes feared for the safety of Sergeant McKnight. At that point, he fired his weapon at the fleeing vehicle. In doing so, he endangered the life of Sergeant McNaught, Mr. Semer, and our public. Inside the vehicle, Sergeant McNaught is struggling with Mr. Semer. During the course, he hears the gunshots. He actually feels Mr. Semer is shooting at him. He utilized his taser at some point as they're struggling. Mr. Semer eventually stops the vehicle abruptly. He flees the vehicle, and as he was running away, Sergeant McNaught observed something in his hand. As he observed this, Sergeant McNaught, hearing the gunshot, actually felt that Mr. Semer was about to harm him, and so at that point, he fired his weapon, fatally wounding Mr. Semer. It was later determined that the object was a cell phone. From our investigation, it is clear that Officer Holmes had obtained Mr. Semer's driver's license. At that point, it was not necessary to pursue the vehicle. He could have later arrested Mr. Semer for the charges of the marijuana. As this investigation continued, it also determined that Officer Holmes was equipped with a video system that was functioning. He had been instructed to take it for repair because he said that it was not working properly, and this never occurred. He repeatedly ignored the orders to make sure his camera was functioning and that he received the training on those cameras. Also during this investigation, we learned that Sergeant McNaught was in possession of an unauthorized camera system that he was ordered to remove from service in January of 2015, but he failed to comply. Finally, investigators learned Officer Holmes was in possession of an unauthorized hinge handcuffs and an unauthorized personally owned rifle. This shows a pattern of operating outside the policies and procedures of this agency. Earlier today, I met with Demarcus Semer's family and informed them of the decision. Although still mourning the loss of Mr. Semer, they remain in prayer that the final justice will be from our Lord. We are making great strides at the Fort Pierce Police Department. As you know, we are in the process of launching our body-worn cameras. We are also deeply enrooted into our community. With our cameras, we will be one of the first agencies in the country to have the technology of these cameras. We're also placing the latest in-car camera system in all the new vehicles that we purchase, and I'm very proud of the Department of Justice partnering with us for collaborative reform. In doing so, we will be meeting or exceeding the standards of proper police procedures and practices throughout this country. Finally, as we strengthen our community relationships, we are trusting and involving our community in all of our decisions and everything that we do. Our front porch roll call is an example where we're out in the community meeting our public. We have Cook's Rule. This is where we have additional training for our officers to sensitize them to the community regardless of culture or economical backgrounds. We have our Courageous Kids where we're mentoring children within the schools and at First Step Park every Tuesday. As we rebuild the Fort Pierce Police Department, I want our citizens to know that our foundation will be firm and we will be open, transparent, and accountable. We will rebuild the Fort Pierce Police Department together, working side by side to improve our beautiful city, not only for today, but for the future generations of our beautiful city. Thank you. Okay, I have questions. And I'm going to say this now, I'm going to be very limited because of appeals and also litigation.
What about these violations that warrants these men being fired versus disciplined in some other manner that would allow them to keep their jobs?
Can you clarify that for me, please?
Is the termination just what results of the offenses that they decommitted because of policies, or why are they fired rather than allowed to keep their job but disciplined in another way?
With the termination, that is a part of going to be of the appeal process, but the final decision of anything comes to me. When I look at both officers having over 5,000 hours of training, SWAT train, and a number of things, it is that we have to believe that our officers in their decision-making is imperative that we have the best and that they will be making proper decisions in every way. The policy violations is also, so it was a combination of the two.
Is there a reaction amongst your departments to not having these two veteran officers around? Do you think there will be an impact to the departments or a loss of services to the community not having these two men?
Well, the officers have been on administrative duty for 2 years, a year now. And yes, not only are they family, and I know it might sound strange with me saying this because I am the chief and I am responsible for the ICE that is taking place here, but the officers are saddened. They have worked with these officers, some for the 14 years that they have been here. So they are part of their family and they are hurt by this. And that's understandable. So yes, my department is saddened.
Do you think that this decision will help rebuild trust with the community and the police department, as I know that's been a focus and a mission of yours?
I think that the decision was the most just decision. And although it might have the after effects of that, it was the right decision to make.
Have the officers given any notice that they're going to appeal this?
They have not provided me with that notice, but I'm just expecting
When were they informed? This morning?
this morning.
What were their reaction?
With one was silence, and with the other, it was I could see that there was anger as well. This is my opinion, of anger and of pain in leaving this department because they have dedicated their life to the Fort Pierce Police Department.
Chief, how is it possible that two officers could be cleared by a grand jury and yet still be fired by this police department?
The administrative review has nothing to do with the grand jury decision. My administrative review is about our policies and procedures of the officers.
And why did it take so long? Comparing to other internal investigations, what was the purpose and why did it take so long?
It took so long, and that's why I said in the first part of how much material it was. It took this investigation 6 months to go from one point to the grand jury. And if you think about that, there's a lot of information there. And as I said, there was over 5,000 pages of documents, there were the audio recordings, and we are as thorough as possible. We read through, listened to, reviewed every single piece of documentation.
Have these officers been on paid administrative leave since this event occurred?
Yes.
What about their future? Are they entitled to come back as a police officer for a different city or jurisdiction, or is their card, if you will, going to be pulled?
That part is not up to me. That's up to the Florida State when they go before the commission to make that to find a determination as far as their certificate of being a law enforcement officer.
And when you part ways with them, is there any kind of final payment they will receive, if you will, for anything? Use vacation time, or can you speak to that?
Well, our human resource department is taking care of that and all their benefits. They gave notice of what benefits that they will receive.
And are they being paid through today since the termination was effective Monday? Is that correct?
Yes,
Did you give them the option of resigning or not?
I did not.
Did they ask?
They did not.
And was this your sole decision, or were there other parties involved in this?
The final decision of the Fort Pierce Police Department rests with me, and so it was my decision.